Hi, my name is Robert Chelle with Chelle Law, and my firm assists physicians with employment contract issues. One thing I'd like to cover today are how are physicians paid in a productivity model. First, there are multiple ways of calculating productivity for a physician, and then, of course, there are multiple ways to compensate them for that. And so I think there's four main areas, and we'll hit all of them. One, you have just a straight net collections based contract. You have just a straight RVU production contract. You have a hybrid of base salary plus net collections, and then a hybrid of base salary plus RVU production. So we'll just kind of go over the basics of all four of those. So first, straight net collections contract. So what that would mean is that anything that is collected by the practice for the physician's services, the physician would then get a percentage of that. So the general percentages are somewhere between 35 to 45% of their net collections, if it's a pure net collections based agreement. 45 is on the high side, but I've seen from 35 all the way up to 45. It's only based on net collections percentage. Some of the downsides of this are at the beginning of the agreement, the physician is going to see almost no compensation for a period of time. The average kind of accounts receivable cycle for an insurance claim is somewhere between 30 to 90 days. And so a physician who's just being paid on net collections, they could be working for a month, but none of that money is collected for, 2 months afterwards. So the physician could theoretically make $0 in the first couple months of the agreement. So in that situation, sometimes we'll have a base draw for the first maybe 3 to 6 months. And then that money that was given to the physician will then be taken out over time, just so that they're not, working for no income for a period of time. Is this a fair way of being compensated? Sure. I think it's also volume dependent. You also have to rely upon the billing and collecting efficiency of the practice that you're with. Some specialties, dermatology comes to mind, where these seem to be much more prevalent than others. But that's kind of the net collections productivity. Second, RVU production only. And so I have a number of videos on RVUs if you don't know what those are, but essentially for every encounter, there is an RVU value, assigned to it. And then the physician is then paid their RVUs produced times a compensation factor, so a numerical or monetary value, usually between $35 all the way up to $80. It's specialty dependent. And so whatever the physician would then produce in RVUs, usually be on the monthly basis. The calculation is simple. They'd be RVUs times the comp factor, and that's how much they would make. The benefits of RVU versus net collections are, in net collections based agreements, it's only what the practice actually gets. So insurance write-offs, defaults by patients who just simply don't pay the bill. As I said before, inefficiency in billing and collecting. All of those things can affect what the physician makes. If it's net collections based, an RVU based contract, the physician is only paid for what they do. Collections have nothing to do with it. So the physician will likely benefit on an RVU based production model versus collections, because all of the bad debt doesn't matter. Now, most private practices don't use RVUs. They use net collections. It's the hospitals and health networks that would use RVU based compensation. So keep that in mind. One is one better than the other, meaning net collections versus RVU. It just is situational dependent. But those are kind of the first, just pure productivity based Third, a hybrid of base salary and net collections. couple ways of doing this. First, kind of I don't know, like a high frequency way of doing this would be the physician will get a base salary, and then each month that their net collections exceeds their base salary, they would then get a percentage of that. Now that would normally be a smaller percentage, usually between like 20 to 30%. So if they're making 10,000, a year, or I'm sorry, a month, then once their net collections for that month exceeded 10,000, then they would get, 20 to 25% of what was collected after that. So that's a normal way of doing kind of a hybrid base salary plus net collections. They could also just come up with some kind of threshold. So, just say maybe their base salary is less than the amount. So let's say even though their base salary would be 10,000 a month, maybe they say the net collections threshold is 20,000, but then they get a much higher percentage, maybe 50% of net collections after that. Once again, kind of, depends upon the situation and specialty, but that's a normal way of doing it for a hybrid net collections model. And then the last model would be some kind of base compensation plus RVU production. So once again, they would have a base salary. Once again, let's just say it's $10,000 a month. And then they would come up with, kind of like an annual target for their RVU production. So let's just say it's family practice, and let's say the baseline is 6,000 RVUs per year. Then they would just divide that either by monthly or quarterly. And so anything that they generate above the certain threshold. So if the expectation is 6,000 a year, then you would just divide 6,000 by 12. And then any RVU generated above that per month, that's when they would then receive the bonus. So you would take the RVUs produced above that amount times whatever the compensation factor is. The benefits of the hybrid model obviously are there's, kind of less variability in the fact that they will have a base. So that there's a minimum amount that the physician will make, but then they're also bonused on top of that as well. I find that once again, especially dependent, but most physicians don't like the potential downside of variability of maybe making much less in a month than others. Like, for instance, if you're a physician who is taking a lot of time off in a month, there is a good chance, like let's just say someone takes a 2-week vacation. Well, if you're being paid purely on collections or RVUs generated in a month, that month is going to be much less than you would make in other months. And some people would prefer just kind of a steady state. Then if they outperform that, then they would get more. So that's kind of how physicians are paid under a productivity model. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, you can always contact my firm at the phone number listed below in the description. Or you can reach us through our website at chellelaw.com, CHELLE law.com, and appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.